All right, Chaz, let's get right to it. There was a certain charm to it. It was different. What kept coming up about Sutter Health Park in West Sacramento is that it felt like a spring training setup. Problem is, it wasn't spring training. It was September. There was a team and the Reds trying to make a September playoff push. And it was, without question, a very large missed opportunity for the Reds because the Mets continue to be in a very generous giving mood. I mean, they're trying to give away this wild card spot. But the Reds were swept by the A's, passed in the standings by the Giants and the Diamondbacks, and now with less than 2 weeks to go in the season, this all happens. So, Chaz, what did you see in the Reds' weekend in California's capital city?
I'm going to zoom out a little bit because what I'm seeing is a trend start to emerge. So let's start with the Friday game against the Mets. Abbott had a bad day. The Reds' next loss was Monday. That's when Nick Lodolo was pitching well, then kind of ran out of gas. He was coming off the sickness, and then the bullpen kind of let that deficit get out of hand after that. The Reds' next loss was Friday in Sacramento. Now that was because of the offense. That's an exception here. But the following day, Green was just a bit off. And then again, the A's pulled ahead with some late inning add-on runs against some lower leverage relievers for the Reds. And it was the same story on Sunday. Lodolo was doing okay, but then let the game slip away and the bullpen pulled away or let the A's pull away after that. So you're seeing kind of the trend, the structure of the game get solidified or crystallized or repetitive for the Reds, and it's exposing the importance of pitchers going deep into games, exposing the importance of the middle chunk of the Reds bullpen just not being deep or productive enough. And then, of course, we've been talking about it all year, the offense, the homers, the not picking the team up, the limited margin for error when you have all that going on.
I got some more thoughts on that. I got some deeper thoughts on what you just opened, the conversation you just opened, but let's follow the format, shall we? Welcome to Power Stacks, proud members of the Growler Podcast Network. Coming up, there was no California love, at least not in Sacktown. More on a lost weekend against the A's. Also, there is still belief in the Reds clubhouse. It's harder to see, harder to feel, but we did hear some of it on Sunday. We'll have that. And forget one game at a time. What's left for the Reds? What's left for the teams they're chasing in this race? That's all on the way. But first, in the leadoff spot, just continuing to what you started, the whole California swing just had this odd feel to it right from the start. And I wondered how it would play out because you couldn't get away from the contrast. You go from San Diego to Sacramento, from sold-out Petco Park to empty seats in the home of the Sacramento River Cats. But the way I saw it, though, aside from the contrast, is that it really set up as the weekend that the Reds could, quote-unquote, make their move. They took 2 of 3 from the Padres. And then for that series, you had Singer, who's pitching as well as anyone the last 2 months, Green and Lodolo to face a last-place team. And even after Green, we talked about the game on Friday, and Singer pitched well. Singer pitched really well, and the Reds dropped that game. But then you have Green with the shortest start of his career. And even after he left the game on Saturday, I thought we were going to have the start of another Nick Martinez story. It wasn't going to be just Nick Martinez, but I thought, okay, here's the moment where Green doesn't have his game, and Nick Martinez comes in and gives length and shuts down. And we have another example of what the Reds have tried to plan for and work with this season with Nick Martinez in the bullpen. Didn't go that way. But what it came down to over the last 2 days on Saturday and Sunday is the Reds couldn't score again with runners in scoring position, which has been a problem throughout the season. And they couldn't outslug one of the best home run hitting teams in all of baseball. Add it all up, and I thought it was set up for the Reds to succeed, and it went exactly the opposite direction.
Something I should look further into, I haven't done this research, is where do the Reds, especially their bullpen, stack up in terms of home run rate allowed? Because it has felt like, the Reds haven't had their big home run moments, and then the bullpen allows theirs, and it feels like that's been another characteristic we've seen carry over. It was a Reds team too that the last time we spoke, I believe we talked about, Stevenson, McLean, Friedel, Austin Hayes, all on a real nice upward trajectory. Well, a lot of those hitters have really crashed back down to earth, especially McLean, who's been cold. Of course, Ellie is having the stretch that he's having. Lux got very, very cold. Marte got cold to the extent that he, I believe, got 2 days off. So it just feels like you don't even know who their best nine is right now. And we've been talking about the concept of a fluid lineup for months, but it changes so quickly from Will Benson can't play for 2 months to how can you take Will Benson's bat out of the lineup? Because look at how his competition's performing. And the lack of being able to know what to expect, even from like the middle chunk of your order. Or for example, the delineation between what you can expect from your leadoff hitter to your number 8 hitter, your number 3 hitter to your number 6 hitter. It does kind of have a feel where, yes, it can be any guy on any night, but you also don't quite have enough you can count on night in, night out, and that leads to inconsistency.
The A's hit 10 home runs across the 3-game series. That accounted for 16 of the 21 runs they scored. And the Reds hit some home runs, but they hit half as many as the A's. And every other time they had runners on base, they just couldn't find a way to move the runner or get the runner home. That kind of summed things up offensively for the Reds in this series. And, we did see I just have to say this, just from a watching baseball standpoint, we saw Nick Kurtz hit one almost 500 feet. Cool. We saw we saw the big Amish and where we were seated for the makeshift visitors press box. He hit that ball, and the elevated batter's eye, which used to be a scoreboard before they upgraded the scoreboard in Sacramento, it just kept going up and up and up. And when it cleared the vertical batter's eye, my jaw just hit the ground because it was still going up and I couldn't see it anymore. 493 feet is what they said it was the longest home run in baseball this season. He hit a couple of those in the series. There's some good young hitters on that team, but I just didn't see it playing out that way. But that was cool.
Quick,
also,
one more thing about Kurtz. This is a very football thing I'm about to say. I'm not saying this is true. I would pick Chase Burns over Nick Kurtz. But the draft decision it was these 7 guys or so not in a hat, but there was very little delineation kind of entering. And I wrote about this. We did a whole show on this when Chase Burns got called up about how there wasn't just a lot of clarity at the top of that draft class. And the Reds kind of picked apart each hitter. And I believe Kurtz had a down final year at Wake, and he had a shoulder thing he was dealing with. And there's a lot of risk in drafting a first baseman. I understand it. I'd pick Chase Burns again. But, we see this in football sometimes. The guy has the big series, and, I talk about big series, big season. I'm looking it up. He's got an OPS over 1 in just about 400 plate appearances. Great young player, but it was funny to see a guy who I just knew solely from 1, having a great season, but 2, mostly from a Reds perspective through that draft preview lens. Because he was a guy I was studying very, very, very intently leading up to the 2024 MLB draft. Again, I'd pick Burns again. It's a very football thing to do, but it was funny to be reminded of the draft debate, which was a real debate back at the time over a year ago.
And he'll win Rookie of the Year. He did also face Chase Burns, his college teammate, for a year at Wake Forest, and almost got him. It was a deep drive to center field, not 493 feet, but it was deep. And so that was fun to see. And that was part of the story for the Reds, as they got Chase Burns, they got Graham Ashcraft back. They had everything lined up, as I said, for the weekend to be a completely different story than what it turned out to be now that the Reds have left Sacramento and moved on. Also, the other thing other than the ballpark, which it was interesting to see the ballpark, just to see how the A's are existing in that environment as a big league team. And to think the most shocking thing is they're going to be there the next 2 years, unless I don't think there's any way that they're not going to be there the next 2 years, but thinking about 3 straight seasons in a minor league ballpark, that was unusual. And the A's, this almost spoke to the rest of the feel of the organization locally. On Sunday, or on Saturday rather, they held their A's Hall of Fame induction ceremony. All of the greatest A's of the last 30 years, all of them, a lot of them were there. In the ballpark were the Bash brothers, Mark McGwire and Jose Canseco, Raleigh Fingers from the 72 World Series team, Dave Stewart, obviously from that 1989 World Series winner and the one that lost to the Reds in 1990. These guys are all running around because they're inducting the big three, Tim Hudson, Mark Mulder, and Barry Zito, into the Hall of Fame. And my thought is, why not wait until you can make it feel a little bit more like a big league Hall of Fame induction ceremony? But then I think, well, you got to wait 2.5 more years if you're going to wait. And so it had a very awkward feel to it during the ceremony. When the guys being inducted are speaking on the field to the sparsely populated seats at the ballpark, the sound system goes down. The whole thing, it was uncomfortable. It was uncomfortable to be there. You felt sorry for the A's, for their Hall of Famers, for their fans. It played out that way. I got a T-shirt, though, for you. I can show you, though, that they were giving out on Sunday. It's the big three. It's Mulder, Zito, and Hudson. And this is outstanding. And it should have been better for those guys and everybody else there than it was. That's just my tangent on.
You want a fun fact?
Give me a fun.
My dad, a Cincinnati guy, wanted to work in baseball. Gave it a shot. For a year, was the assistant traveling secretary and statistician for the Oakland A's in the late 1970s.
Get right out. How come you buried the lead? How come we've never talked about your dad?
I mean, he did. It's not like he had a long show experience. I believe the team was pretty bad when he was there too. I might have the specific year wrong. I'm pretty sure it was the late 70s.
They would have been very good right before that.
Yes, that's right.
They won in 72 and 73 and 74.
It was either the late 70s or the early 80s. But yeah, there's your fun fact of the day.
I enjoyed that one. I like that. But the whole thing,
he doesn't have any good stories, if that's what you're asking.
No, that's okay. That's okay. It was just weird. It was awkward. And then it was compounded for anyone following the Reds by what happened to the Reds in that series. And just kind of where it feels like it took the season at this point. So let's try and move on from Sacramento and let's get into what's left for the contending teams right now. So we mentioned the Mets the Mets. It's just been miserable for the Mets. I can't imagine what it's like to try and figure that team out or cover that team right now. But what they have left, San Diego, Washington, the Cubs, and then the Marlins, a Marlins team that has been much better than you would think the Marlins are. The Giants have Arizona. They have 4 with the Dodgers. They have St. Louis and Colorado. Arizona has the Giants. So those two teams are going to in some way cancel each other out in a series. They've got Philly. They've got the Dodgers. They've got San Diego. So the road facing Arizona right now is stacked. And then the Reds have the Cardinals, the Cubs, the Pirates, and a Milwaukee team that in the last series of the season won't have anything to do except try to set themselves up for the postseason. So the Reds are all division games the rest of the way. As impossible as it feels for the Reds, when I started looking at the schedule you don't know what's going to happen. You can't rule anything out at this point with 13 games to go as we speak.
It's funny. I'll peel back behind the curtain. I'm in St. Louis right now. What I told myself was, all right, I'm going to go to St. Louis if the Reds are, I said this last Monday, I said to myself, I'll go with the Reds are within 2 games. And now it's 2.5 right now, but kind of the arbitrary deadline I said at this point last week for the Reds being in it, they're basically right there. So here I am in St. Louis. If you would have said, all right, this is where it's going to be at this point last week, before their dramatics and theatrics and emotion of the Padres series combined with the Mets collapse, that's kind of about where you expected. And the Reds got their own way and prevented themselves from being in in the actual playoff spot right now. But if you look at, again, arbitrary deadline, their playoff odds feel like they have improved since about 10 days ago on the whole, even though, the collapsing nature that some of those losses felt like. I still think they pretty much control their own destiny. Now they don't. They'll have to go on a run, but it's within enough striking distance, and I don't see any of the teams ahead of them getting hot. So if they do have that great, win 8 out of 10, 9 out of 10, that's a good spot to be. It has you feeling good about what your shot would be then at that point. But the problem is, again, who can the Reds count on tonight? That's kind of the tricky dilemma they face themselves right in the middle of.
Well, let's take that into Tito's take, because on Sunday, Terry Francona addressed a few of those things. Before the game, it was brought up about, team meetings, when he speaks to a team, what he says. And he said this before this season, that he doesn't really do that a ton. You don't want to have too many of those. When you do, you want it to be impactful and then move on. He said the last time he talked to his team was after they were swept by the Dodgers in Los Angeles. And he talked about just connecting with them about what they still had in front of them, that they could make the final month of the season the best month of the season, the most enjoyable month of the season. There have been some moments. They won back-to-back series against the Mets and the Padres. But now they're away from those moments, having been swept by the A's. So I don't think he's planning any big speeches, but after the game on Sunday, he kind of gave one publicly and said, look, he kind of gave that manager coach speech that, we still believe. Sometimes it's darkest before, and he didn't say darkest before the dawn, but that was implied.
Is that,
but he
I
said
have a
there's
dumb
still
question.
belief in the clubhouse.
Is that a movie quote?
Darkest before the dawn?
Yeah.
I think that's just an American.
Okay. Just a thing we say.
Accepted. Just a thing we say. Okay. I mean,
just checking.
I don't know. That's right. I really don't know the answer to that. And if I'm probably wrong. Anyway, he said there's still belief. And it comes across as sincere that he really does believe that. What else is he going to say? I get it. But I think he really does still believe that there's something that could happen for this team the rest of the way. The odds have gotten immeasurably higher and longer in the last week or a few days for the Reds, though, to convince people that that's possible. But we've seen some weird things happen, and that's why I look at the schedule and the matchups for each of these teams and wonder, okay, you've still got me thinking and looking at what this team's going to do in the next 2 weeks.
If there's anything we've learned too, it's that the schedule basically has been irrelevant for the 2025 Reds.
That's a great point.
One of the takeaways of the season. It's funny too, because you could have made the same point about backs against the wall response to adversity. Now, I do think that some of the recent losses and how this stretch has snowballed has chipped away at some of that armor that the Reds were carrying, that they were a great team when they were facing a must-win game. But it is a team because of the upside that their pitching and speed and depth provides them, combined with a couple guys who have shown they can get hot. I mean, we've seen those series, and then we've seen the series like Sacramento, where all of the house of cards just crumbles for this team. So, again, it feels irrelevant because it feels like the Reds are going to have to go on a run one way or another, and they do control that because they've shown that they're good enough to go on a run. They have the talent to go on a run. Now, on September 15th, there's no proof of concept that, this Reds team can just with the snap of its fingers start firing on all cylinders, because here we are, and they haven't done that yet all season. They haven't had that window of baseball yet all season. So it kind of, again, just leaves you stuck saying, how do you win tonight?
Final thought on that. The Reds are about as deep and healthy as you could possibly hope to be in September. Like I said, the bullpen options got greater. The lineup options are there. We'll talk about the lineup in just a minute, but that's the other thing about this is everyone deals with injuries, and the Reds have had injury. They've had illness. Yeah, we get that. That's been a story the last couple of weeks, but you get to this point of the season, and I think they feel like, okay, we've got what we wanted to have in terms of options.
I've been thinking about that a lot. Like, I've got the IL right in front of me. The IL is Callahan, Miley, Spires, Aguiar, Williamson, Jabot, and Louder. In that group, Rhett Louder is the only guy who I think would probably be on the team, be on the 28-man roster in terms of where they'd stack up on the pecking order. And Louder's been out all season. So the fact that they are this healthy, like in previous years, in 2021, the Reds ran out of infielders and ran out of pitching. In 2023, they ran out of pitching and they ran out of position player depth and started starting Nick Martini. In 2024, they ran out of pitching. The Reds have as much as they could realistically expect. I even think they have some intriguing guys in AAA that just don't have an opportunity for actual at-bats right now. Heck, that might have been a part of the reason why they waited to call up Sal Stewart as long as they did. That does reflect some of the missed opportunity for this Reds team. The fact that they are that healthy and there has been no reason for a September slide, but they still haven't been able to play their best baseball.
Yes. Health. Health. There's certainly still some fatigue. Everybody's got that, but I think you've seen that with certain players on this team. That has been a factor, but I think you have to feel great about where they've been and where they've gotten at this point in the season. All right, Chaz, now it's time for this week's Reds milestone moment of the week. And despite the fact that Elly De La Cruz has struggled in the second half of the season, his career trajectory is still phenomenal. And with his 35th stolen base of the season that came over the weekend against the A's in Sacramento, he's now one of only a handful of players. And when I say handful, I think there are now, including De La Cruz, 4 on that list to steal 35 bases in each of his first 3 big league seasons. He had about twice as many last season as he has this year. But 35 again, he's 3rd in the National League right now, but 35 in each of his first 3 big league seasons puts him in some very select company, and that's this week's Reds milestone of the week. And the milestone of the week, as always, is brought to you by Glenville Ave, Chaz, our good friends at Glenville Ave. They make the baby blanket designed by parents who want something better. If you haven't checked it out, we've been talking about it for weeks now because they've been supporting this show for most of the summer. If you haven't seen it yet or you're just now hearing about it, go to the website, GlenvilleAveLLC.com, GlenvilleAveLLC.com, and use the promo code STACKS because they're going to give you 15% off your first order. Baby blankets that grow with your child. You can mark milestones in your child's life, in your family's life. They're softer, safer, bigger. It's the perfect gift for someone in your family or someone you know. So grandparents, aunts, uncles, parents, everybody listen up. You're going to need this at some point, and we're going to give you this and tell you where to find it. It's Glenville Ave, and we thank them for their support of Power Stacks, and we hope the Power Stacks community will do the same and support them. Let's get into Charlie's notebook now. And the notebook, let's go back to some of the lineup decisions that we've referenced already in the show. Will Benson goes from not starting to starting, I think, 3 of 5 games, and he only missed one of those games because after crashing into the wall in San Diego, they thought it best to give him at least a day. But the guy has shown up, and we've said this before on this show, and Terry Francona backed it up when he was asked about it over the weekend. Even when he wasn't playing much, certainly not starting, he's one of the main players out every day working with Colin Cowgill in the outfield, taking every possible swing he can get in BP or live BPs for guys who are coming back. He's just kept his head down and worked, and he's making a difference. The Reds couldn't convert some of these games to wins, but when he's been given the opportunity, he's taken advantage.
I don't know what to make of the fact or the opportunity that Benson got this season. Like, what's the lesson here? Like, what can we learn from this about Terry Francona, about the Reds organizational philosophy, about things they prioritize when making lineup decisions, the role of power, the role of upside versus the role of situational hitting, the role of consistent contact. And for whatever reason, that decision was made that Benson wouldn't play much and that playing time was hard to come by. Now it's refreshing to see the Reds then make a quick adjustment and reward Benson for the power that he's been showing and the hot stretch that he's had. It has been a Reds team that has kind of rewarded guys like that in the short term consistently this season, so that fits with what we've seen of the trend of the year. But then at the end of the day, Benson's an easy guy to root for, and the swing looks like it's in a good spot. And I think he's still a guy who should be in the Reds' plans for 2026. And he's kind of the one winner of this stretch of baseball for a struggling Reds team.
Outside of the fact that we may see some more of Will Benson. I mean, I think the Cardinals start a lefty tonight, so maybe not tonight, but see more of Will Benson. Likely see maybe more of Sal Stewart just because he's hot right now and playing the way he is. Do you see any other adjustments or things that Terry Francona might do with the lineup, given the fact that time is short and they need to win every night?
What makes it tough is that a lot of the versatility that you felt like you had, you just don't right now. Like, for example, Steer's been banged up all summer. Is he not playing the outfield because of the leg injury? I don't have a concrete answer for that, but that's not a big jump to take. So Steer's just limited to be at first base. And that's been mainly Sal Stewart's position over the last couple of weeks. You have Gavin Lux, who has kind of struggled defensively. He's kind of shown some more signs as the season's gone on. It's been a long season. They've gone out of the way to make him their DH a lot, but it's a DH spot that could be valuable also with a guy like Steer or Stewart or Miguel Andujar, who barely plays anymore. His leg injury has kind of limited a lot of the Reds' flexibility because he's one of their hottest hitters, but they can't get his bat in the lineup consistently, or they're not able to because he's not able to play an entire game. Then you have Benson coming onto the scene, and that's reduced playing time, further for a guy like Steer. McLean lost a start. Marte lost 2 starts. Marte was in a terrible slump where the strikeouts started to tick up. Austin Hayes has had a few starts slip away. It felt like the only guys who kind of show up to the park knowing they're going to play are Ellie, our Brian Hayes, and our TJ Friedel. And we're not looking to 2026 yet, but what does that mean for 2026? It still means a lot of spots unsettled when you look at who's playing where and who fits where in this Reds young core.
The road trip wraps up in St. Louis. Long road trip, the last long road trip of the season. And the Cardinals are still the Cardinals. The Cardinals are sub 500. The Cardinals have had lost 5 straight games until they beat Milwaukee on Sunday. There have been a lot of things written and said about the great baseball town of St. Louis. They've had some of the smallest crowds in the history of that ballpark. I don't know what the Reds are going to walk into in this series. I don't know what that Cardinals team, what the vibe is right now in the clubhouse or around the ballpark. It doesn't matter. The Reds have to win. But what do you see in terms of trying to make the turn now with 3 games in St. Louis?
I mean, I guess the first step is the lefty tonight, right? So is Andujar in a place where he can start and play the entire game and impact the lineup for a complete game in that way? Spencer Steer versus Sal Stewart. Do they continue to ride the hot hand with Sal Stewart? What does that mean for some other moving pieces in the lineup? These are just the short-term decisions you have to look at. Another big one is the bullpen. Let's say that Littell tonight, correct? Littell gives you 5 solid. All right. Now what's the plan after that? After pitching a couple innings a couple days ago, what's Martinez's availability? Burns should be fresh, should be ready to possibly go 2 tonight. Like we talked about on the previous show, do you bump Santian up ahead of Burns to try to help make Burns' innings easier? Like there are a lot of decisions that are almost even independent of who they're facing that'll define what this, run or not run is going to be for the Reds for the last couple weeks of the year.
Santian, speaking of Santian, he pitched the 6th on Sunday. Yeah, and so there was a little bit of a change in philosophy there. He threw the 6th, but if you're going to do what you hope to do, if you're going to make this interesting or make a run, however you want to look at it, you want to have all your options available. And I think the Reds have as many options pitching and lineup-wise as they've had, as we've said. So we'll see where it goes. After the St. Louis series, you're back home for the final homestand. And then until I made the schedules out this afternoon and looked at what every team had left, I hadn't really thought as much about if it comes down to the final series of the season and the Mets are playing the Marlins, the Giants are playing Colorado, and the Reds are playing Milwaukee, a Milwaukee team that is already clinched, and like I said, will have very little interest or motivation in the final 3 regular season games. Just something to think about. Something to think about, the schedule in front and how it ends for each team as the Reds try to make a push. Chaz, I'll see you at the ballpark. All right. Thanks to producer Kent and to everyone listening or watching. You can do it anywhere you get your podcast. You can check us out on YouTube. Thanks to Glenville Ave for their support. And we'll see you next time on Power Stacks.